people, welcome back to Spiritual Superheroes Coaching. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell, and let's get into it. So firstly, I'll ask you a question. What comes to mind when you think of the word courage? I will encourage anyone to write their answers in the comments. So the word I think of when I think of courage is vulnerability, because you really can't have one without the other. For some of us, it is ingrained from an early age that if we are vulnerable, we are left open to negative criticisms and other things like that. Therefore, we grow up fearing vulnerability. While we are growing up fearing vulnerability by feeling that it is showing a sign of weakness, we are then fearing everything basically that is going to become of us, because everything around us and everything inside us that we will become does require some sort of vulnerability. Once upon a time I had a wall up. Now the reason I had that wall up is because once upon a time I wasn't such a superhero. I did in fact have a few self-esteem issues and low self-confidence. Throughout my high school days I was in fact bullied a lot, and this caused me to a lot of the time go into myself. I became very introverted and didn't really say a lot, because I figured that if I didn't say anything, then nobody would have things to use against me. What I realise now as an adult is that yes, some people are going to hurt. Courage in any situation is a spitefulness of spirit, if you will. Now I say it's spite because despite everything that could happen that might be bad, we should then not sacrifice our own authenticity, our own truths, our own story in life, things that make us our own human being, for the sake of anyone else. We should remain courageous in spirit. We should be not scared to be out there telling our story, what we've been through, what life has taught us in many ways, and we should use that to help others that may be in situations that may require some level of courage by uplifting others. By opening ourselves up to vulnerability, we then gain the ability to be helping people who may struggle with self-esteem issues, might be somewhat shy. Shyness is actually lack of vulnerability as well. People are shy because they're shy about being vulnerable. So to help people with their shyness, we have to then lead by example and show them that by being confident, by being a little bit more, I guess, out there in the world, things can be achieved, great things can be achieved. But courage, again, is knowing that people are going to criticize us some of the time, and that's okay. We need to not so much let people know that vulnerability is not a weakness, which it totally isn't, but we also need to let people know that people are going to criticize us. That is just sadly the way people are a lot of the time. But what people need to know is that it's okay, because criticisms come down a lot of the time to opinions, which leads me back to self-esteem. We only care about being vulnerable with these people that have an opinion about us because we care about their opinion. Why do we care about their opinion, you ask? In a situation where we may have low self-esteem, we care about someone's opinion because we want that person to like us. We want to feel validated. We want to feel like our own opinions matter. And therefore, we will do whatever we can to fit in, to be able to calm our own inner turmoil that is connected to our own self-esteem. In order to be vulnerable, we have to first be vulnerable with ourselves. Vulnerability requires courageousness. So, at the center of vulnerability are 5 things. Shame is number 1. We may be afraid to be vulnerable in fear that we may feel that at times someone somewhere may be ashamed of what we are doing. They may make us feel like we are doing the wrong thing. But again, we have to stay true to ourselves. Number 2 is scarcity. We may be scared that we are not doing the right thing for ourselves. Or we may be scared of something that someone else may have an opinion about. But at the end of the day, these scarcities should not then breed a fear of vulnerability. We have to stay the course. Number 3 is fear. We may be fearful of the risks we are taking by being vulnerable and doing things that we otherwise would shy away from. Fears connected to vulnerability are as is. There is a fear of rejection, a fear that we will be judged, a fear that someone may not like what we are doing. They will not accept what we are doing. But again, we have so much more to gain by opening ourselves up to courage and losing the vulnerability. Number 4 is anxiety. So with that, I have a little story to tell you. I had an anxiety attack yesterday. Now that anxiety had me feeling very open and very vulnerable. Those who suffer from anxiety problems know that when you are in the throes of an anxiety attack, you get the dizzy spells and you get the racing heart and all of that stuff. Now, the vulnerability part is that while you are feeling dizzy and stuff, you may feel like you are going to pass out. Now, the thing that makes the anxiety worse is that we will often feel vulnerable to let people know actually how we are feeling, because worst case scenario, if we pass out or even worse, have a seizure of some sort, we are then going to be fearful that we may look a little silly. But in that situation, I think you will find that people would be more concerned about your well-being. The last one at the centre of vulnerability is uncertainty. Now, we know that things that we are unsure about, that we are uncertain about, it may be our future, things in our future, we don't know yet. But how are we going to get to know those things if we don't go towards them and we actually shy away from them? So, as far as uncertainty goes, uncertainty requires a lot of courage as well. I'll leave you all with this thought. Now, while all of those 5 things that I mentioned and talked about are at the center of vulnerability, vulnerability is also the birthplace of love. When we are vulnerable, we open ourselves up to expressing love greater. We are open to receiving love better. And therefore, everything that we are craving within our fears can be realized if we are just a little bit vulnerable. We will find belonging, and we will find joy, and we will find peace. So, with that, I am the spiritual superhero, and I will see you all on the next one. Peace out.